Today, I'm going to be looking at a few different resumes so that we can see patterns between the resumes. We can see patterns in what people are doing well, what people need to improve, and we can hopefully glean some sort of high-level patterns that you should be using to apply when you're making your resume. So the first one that we'll look at today is from someone who is a video game designer, product designer, and QA tester. So let's just quickly look through this resume and see what we've got. We've got a headline. We've got a little subheadline that's kind of a sales pitch about the candidate. We've got contact information. And then once we get down into the body of the resume, we've got a section for education, work experiences down here in the corner, a note about organizations that he's worked with. And then we've got some sort of bullet points around skills. We've got a link to a portfolio, some online certificate, and languages and some other interests. So let's start at the top. From the beginning here, I would say this headline is actually the first place that we need to start improving. And this is because he lists sort of 3 different jobs that he's trying to accomplish with this resume. So if I'm a hiring manager or a recruiter and I see this, I don't know which job he actually wants. And I don't know what job he's the best fit for. So the very first thing to do here is to decide which job you're applying for and then change the headline to match that job. So if you're applying for video game designer jobs, use this. If you're applying for QA tester jobs, use this. Now that does mean that you might need 2 or 3 different versions of this resume, depending on, if you're actually applying to game design jobs and QA tester jobs, that's fine. That's what you should be doing. What you don't want is for a hiring manager to see the very first sentence in your resume and not know what you're trying to accomplish and not know where to put you. Next, we've got this subhead, dedicated, ambitious, and focused on grabbing user attention with best possible outcome. I think that's fine. It sort of piques my interest to go read the rest of the resume. I think you could probably spend a little time improving that, but overall, I think it's okay. In the body of the resume, I think the biggest problem that we need to improve is this work experience. Work experience section should be, at least half, maybe up to 80% of your resume by volume. So, education's not as important. Generally, you put that at the bottom of the resume. Usually work experience is at the top, front and center. And we need a lot more information about what you did in each of these positions. So, for starters, this section, this whole write-up, is only about the company. It doesn't say anything about what you did or what you accomplished at this company, then it needs to be changed. So he's going to want to remove this, I'd say. If somebody wants to know what the company is all about, they can go look it up online. But he's going to want to put between 3 and 5 bullets here that talk about what exactly he did. What did he do? What did he accomplish? What were the results of that? And then hopefully be able to put in some metrics that help support what he actually accomplished and make it look great and make it be impressive work. Same thing with this second bit of experience. This entire paragraph is spent talking about Orange Box Lab. That stuff's all available online. Somebody can go look it up if they're interested. This is your time to sell yourself as a candidate. So what you would want, again, you would want to add 3 to 5 bullet points, each one of the bullet points talking about something that you did and that you accomplished at this job. And the hiring manager should be able to read just this section and have a pretty good sense of your skills based on what you've done in the past. So that's the biggest change that this resume needs. Move this work experience section up to the top. Also, there's a lot of wasted space. There's a lot of wasted white space here. And so I would get rid of this 2-column layout and just switch to a single column. And that'll let you spend at least this whole top part just focused on work experience. And you can put some of the skills and certificates in organizations sort of at the bottom, just in this bottom section down here. So that's going to be the most impactful change. Really expand this work experience section, put it at the very top, front and center. A couple of other things to note. One of them, so it's great that he put his a link to his online portfolio. However, when I clicked through to that portfolio, it looked like it was sort of a placeholder website. It didn't actually have a portfolio there. So I don't know if that portfolio was in progress or if he just hasn't finished it yet. But before you send out your portfolio, you definitely want to make sure that the link is linking to a page that's actually an online portfolio website. The other thing is that he added a picture of himself here. Now, I've seen that off and on in resumes, in various countries around the world. Generally, it's not a good idea to put a picture of yourself. There's a couple different reasons for that. But the main reason is that you want to keep the readers of your resume, so the recruiters and hiring managers, you want to keep them focused on what you accomplished. You don't want them focused at all on what you look like. The other reason is that as humans, we all have implicit biases and unconscious biases. And so if somebody sees a picture of you and they don't like your hat or they don't like your mustache or whatever, that can kind of color the way that they read your resume in a positive or a negative way. And you don't really have control over that. So in general, I'd say leave off the photo. It's not really important what you look like. It's important what you accomplished. So ditch the photo and expand the work experience. And I think you're going to be a lot more successful with a resume like this. Okay, let's take a look at this resume. This is from a game programmer and designer. We'll just take a look at it from a high level first. We've got a name, a title, and they went with a 2-column layout. The main column over here starts with the profile, followed by employment history, education, some courses that they've taken at various, looks like maybe online and some in-person universities, and then a mention about some conferences that they attended. And in the small column here, they've got their contact info, links to their portfolio and social media accounts, a list of some skills that they have, a mention of some hobbies and languages. At a high level, I think this is a really good start. I especially like this profile section because I think it's a great opener for this resume. It says, I'm a game programmer who started by making Halo CE mods at 13. Well, that's really impressive. And if I'm a hiring manager reading this, I'm instantly taken in by this because I think, oh, this person is passionate. They started at an early age, so they probably have a lot more experience than other candidates that I've maybe looked at that didn't start until they were a little older. So that really is going to catch my eye. So that's great. Moving on to what I think we can improve. The employment history section is tiny on this resume. And that's too bad because the employment history is the most important part of the resume. So how we'd want to improve this is by expanding each one of these roles with bullet points of what you did. So it says that he's a lead programmer for this game, but it doesn't say what exactly he did. It's very generic, gameplay design and programming. We're going to want to get a lot more specific because when a hiring manager or a recruiter is reading this resume, they want to know exactly what you did because that'll inform what they think you can do for them. So there's lots of different things that you can program in a game. What did this person program? We don't know. So for each one of these, I'd expand it out into 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 bullet points. So you'd say something like programmed A-star pathfinding algorithm for XYZ number of NPCs and XYZ number of graph nodes or whatever, right? So you want to give a lot more detail on what you did. So that's the most important thing there is this employment history. Now, the other thing is, even though this person's only got a few years of experience, they're taking up 2 pages of a resume, you can easily get this down onto 1 page, and that'll make it easier for recruiters and hiring managers to skim and to find the important information they're looking for. So how do you do that? How do you take this 2-page resume and get it down into 1 page while also expanding on this employment history section? Well, first of all, I would say ditch the 2-column format, because 2-column formats end up with a lot of wasted space. So if you look on page 2 here, tons of unused white space. So instantly, by going to a 1-column format, you're already going to get a lot of space back. There's some other things I'd probably remove from this. So in particular, this skills section with these sort of progress bars, I see this pretty frequently. I have a feeling there's some resume builder websites or software out there that do this sort of progress bar thing. But it looks cool, but it's not at all helpful for recruiters or hiring managers to understand anything about you. So for example, Unreal Engine, I'm assuming this progress bar means this is the amount of experience that you've had with Unreal Engine, I guess. And it looks like it's about 3/4 full. I don't know what it means to be 3/4 experienced with Unreal Engine. It just doesn't give me any information. So if you have the skill, just list the skill. If you don't have it, don't list it. This list of 6 skills could easily be just 6 little bullet points, and they'd take up maybe 1/3 of the space. So I definitely consider doing that. Another thing I'd take a look at is cutting or compacting this course list. I don't think that this is super helpful information for a hiring manager trying to understand whether this person has accomplished a lot in their career. So this is basically stuff that you've learned, but as somebody who's not familiar with RIT's video game design history, I don't really know what it means that you took this. I don't know what skills you left with. I assume that if you generated any portfolio pieces, I'll already be able to see those in your portfolio. So I just don't feel like this is giving me much information. So if anything, I would compress this down to just add it to your education section. You could say, multiple game-related online courses, including, and then pick maybe the 2 or 3 most interesting ones and list those. So, various online courses, including machine learning from Stafford, game theory 2 from Stafford, and gamification at University of Penn, whatever it is. So you could easily make this entire section be a couple of sentences, and I think that would be just as impactful for the reader. Another thing I want to call out here, this conferences section. When I first read this, I thought it was just a list of conferences that you attended. I didn't really care what conferences you attended, but then I saw, I see, he gave a talk at one of these conferences. Now that's more impressive. So I would actually make that more obvious. Instead of calling this conferences, I think you could call this something like speaking, or I don't know. Yeah, I'd call it probably speaking, public speaking or something like that. That really makes it obvious that you gave a talk here at this conference. Let's see, what else could we improve here? I think those are the main things that I'd go over. So just to summarize, profile is really strong. I think this is a good example that that other people should look at for how to construct a quick profile overview. I would make this far more space efficient by turning it into a 1-column layout and really expand this employment history with details, metrics that describe your impact for each of these job roles. Okay, this resume is from an artist who has several years of experience in the industry. So they've got a lot of work history and a lot of education that they need to pack into a small amount of space. So let's see how they did. Let's take a look at it from a high level. We've got name, contact information, a little personal profile write-up. And then we go into work history. And then we list out kind of a skill set. We mention the technical skill set, basically the software experience. And then in the second column, we've got a list of education, and then a list of courses, which is more education on that side. So let's see what is good about this and what needs improvement. I think this is a pretty good write-up, the personal profile. It's a good overview that sets the stage for the rest of the document and gives context as to the experience and some other soft skills such as supportive and enthusiastic team player. So I think that's great. That's really good. Where we can improve, I would start with work history. The way that this is written now, it's in a narrative form, so it reads like a story. And what we want to do is change this from a narrative to more of a bullet list. And that's because bullet lists are easier to skim. So if I'm a hiring manager or a recruiter and I'm skimming this work history and I'm looking for a specific type of work, it's going to be difficult to pick it out without reading this whole thing. And some people might just kind of rush through it or skip over it. Leaves particular details kind of buried. So we'll want to change this to a bullet list. Next, some of these other ones really don't have much information. So kind of says what this person did, but it doesn't say anything about the impact or the scope. So we'll want to expand these by adding 3 to 5 bullet points for each one of them. So for an example here, this one says traditional character animation. Let's get more detail. What sorts of characters did the candidate animate? How many? What were some interesting things? Were they like low poly, high poly? Were they cartoony? Were they realistic? So we need a lot more information in here about what they did. Now, somebody might say, well, look, they've got a link to their online portfolio up here. So why do we need to go into that sort of detail in the resume? Well, the answer is the resume is what's going to get people interested enough to go click through and do a little more work to go look at your portfolio. So a recruiter, for example, is not even going to click through to your portfolio, probably. A recruiter is just going to look for the experience that the hiring manager has said the hiring manager wants. And if they don't see it in your resume, they're probably just going to skip on to the next resume, and you're going to lose your chance. So you want to add as much detail as you can in your work history so that the recruiter passes this resume on to the hiring manager, and then it engages the hiring manager and entices the hiring manager to go dig deeper and look at your at your online portfolio. So that's kind of how it works. So basically this work history needs way more expansion. And I would do that by ditching this 2-column layout. You can get a lot more information in the same amount of space when you use just 1 column. I also would not use, I don't think I would state all of these courses that were in here. So education is fine because it talks about degrees. So that's great, but I don't know if we need a big list of all the courses that this person took. So I would compact all of these into maybe 1 or 2 sentences about continuing education. Just not that helpful to see the different certificates that were there. That'll free up a lot more space for the important part, which is your work history. That's what people care about the most when they're reading your resume. There's another thing that I noticed when I was reading through this that I think is worth mentioning. It's a little bit of a grammar geek thing, but in some areas, he is talking sort of in the third person. So he's saying has expertise in creating 2D and 3D artwork. So that's the third person. And then in some places, he's speaking in the first person. My role was to create high-quality CGI products. So the traditional way to do resumes is to speak in the first person, but to omit the words my or I. So instead of saying my role was to create high quality CGI products, you would say created high quality CGI products. So what you're really saying there is I created high quality CGI products, but you leave off I. Just kind of save space. So I would change this around. You could even use the same content, just change it to bullet points and put it in that past tense first person. And also make that consistent throughout the entire document. So I think that's it. This is actually a pretty strong resume as is, honestly. It's got a lot of information. This person's clearly experienced, but it's just lacking information about what you actually did at these different jobs. So I'd expand those, ditch or compact the courses, make it a little more uniform in the grammar that you're using throughout the document. And I think this will be a really strong resume.